Right on. So yeah, I just got done uploading about 653 videos to the movement library on YouTube. So hopefully people can stop asking me for more videos on there. It's really helpful for the gyms though that are on the programming, so they can, obviously we get the daily workout video, but then there's a movement library, so we're trying to build that out. It's amazing, all the videos, just simple movements, no fluff. It's like
Mm-hmm.
3 to 5 second bursts of, hey, this is what it looks like, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just crazy all the different variety this program has, and then you're trying to like
Right.
cover all the different things. So we're getting there slowly but surely. Then every now and again you seem to come up with something
Mm-hmm.
new.
Well, that's what I was thinking about lately. Is I actually have quite a bit of new stuff, and I'm actually doing a little bit of kind of like experiment with a little bit different adjustments in programming. I'm doing that with Leanne, right? So we're doing that right now, and so that'll eventually, I'm sure, creep over. I just want to make sure I want to perfect it before it gets over there.
For sure.
So making a little adjustments right now. So there's some stuff coming. That and I want to. What we're doing is we're videoing the stuff that she's doing, so that when we can transfer everything over, the videos will already be done for the exercises. So that way, it's not like trying to catch up. And the reasons why we're doing this different variety, brought this new variety in, and these other things. So yeah, there'll definitely be
It's a
stuff
lot of
coming
fun
for
too.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Not gonna leak anything just yet, but I've
Mm-hmm.
been experimenting with some of the stuff you showed me, and been having a good time with it. I was actually
Good.
teaching a course on base yesterday with the army, and during one of the lunchtime workouts, a guy was saying something about he had this pain and that pain, and I was like, "Hey, I actually got something for you."
Mm-hmm.
And we experimented with some of the things that we'd been working on when you guys were down here. Some of the stuff that Leanne was showing me, some of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you were showing me, and he's like, "Man, I feel that." I'm not gonna say what, because I don't want to leak
Mm-hmm.
anything. But he's like, "Man, I feel this thing firing like I've never
Yeah.
felt it before." And I was like, "Yeah, exactly." So it would, and I just told him, I was like, "Hey, it would be beneficial to do this prior to your workouts if you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna do the lift that it bothers. Like, this is a really good way to fire that thing up and make sure that everything's firing and appropriately, and that you're getting yourself into the best position possible."
There's some things when we talk about variety that people don't really talk about. We talk about variety to learn new movement as fast as possible, and we talk about variety saying that, glaring weaknesses can't hide. That if we have enough variety, it will expose any weakness, and those things are all true. But also, variety helps you learn other movements sometimes. So, I found like people who don't know how to engage their back properly on a bench, a bow bar often helps people learn that feeling, right? People
Yeah,
who,
because you're really having to,
yep,
instead of pretending to spread the bar, it's really forcing you to with that angle
correct.
change.
Correct. And then so you have some bars that will help you get a feeling, teach you something that you want you to do, or it's something like I want people to wedge between the bar and the bench when they bench press. I don't want them to push the bar away. I want you to push your back into the bench, wedge between the bar
Driving
and bench.
through the pad.
Correct. So my favorite thing for that is a dead press, because that's all you have. You don't lower the weight. The only thing you can do is wedge yourself between the bar and the bench. The bench isn't going to move, so the bar is going to, but you're going to put pressure in that bar and start feeling your back push harder and harder into the bench until that bar leaves the pin. And that gives you the exact feeling you want to have when you're doing a competitive style bench, or you're doing any kind of bench, in training. But it's the easiest and first place you'll be able to feel it on. If you can't feel that feeling in a regular bench, go to a dead press. Dead press will teach you that. So what a lot of people don't realize is if you do enough accessory movements, you might have a muscle group that doesn't fire real well, that you have a hard time feeling. You just have to find one exercise that you'll feel in that muscle group. Once you find one, work that really hard, and when you get stronger and better at it, you'll find another one and keep trying the other ones and rotate them back in, even ones that didn't work before. And eventually you'll pick up a second one and a third one. And then once that starts happening, it's only a matter of time before all the exercises are available to you and that you'll be able to feel and fire really well. People who do things for a long period of time often create very glaring weaknesses. Like you see a lot of people like playing volleyball from hitting. A lot of, like, say if they're hitting with the right shoulder rolls and cocks forward. The left shoulder would be fine, but their hitting shoulder's rolled forward. Well, if they've been like that way long enough, you'll see they have no muscle in the back of their shoulder blade, and that area is all atrophied. You'll see the other side is much more muscular.
Really?
and
From the
yeah,
hitting side.
yeah, from the hitting
Okay.
side. And so then I'll go to the hitting side, and I've done stuff where like we take a tens unit and have them work out and put a tens unit on the area that is not firing because they don't get much feeling out of it. Anytime a muscle group's on a stretch for a really long period of time, it starts to shut off, and it makes it very hard to re-engage, right? So there's a lot of different little tricks that we'll have to re-engage those. But having variety in exercise, you just have to find one that hits the area that you can figure out how to fire and learn how to use it and get feeling out of it. And if you train that hard enough and do as many varieties and tempos, range of motion, maybe you can change it from band tension to weight to chain, get as many variations as you can in that single movement, and then start experimenting with other movements. Keep doing that movement until you're picking up enough other movements that you can rotate through them, just to get it back firing again. So that variety helps figure out injuries, helps you get past some of these problems, and it also helps you, again, learn how to feel things that you would normally have. Like I said, if you don't know how to, if you don't know how to,
So you're, can you hear me? I think I lost you. I think your internet's going out. Is your internet good? I know we're all getting hit with this damn storm right now. Fuck. No, I think it's. It looks like my internet's good. Can you hear me? It might have just dropped. What's my Wi-Fi speed? Speed test. My shit is blazing.
okay, mine's
Cool.
usually
Yeah, Karen, now
fast,
it's
but
better.
yeah, okay, cool.
You're
Sorry.
probably
So,
on the other
yeah, right.
the other link.
So, yeah, so basically, like, if I want to teach someone to pull a bar apart, bamboo bar is the easiest one to feel and learn that on. If I want to teach someone how to use their back better, then a bow bar is perfect bar for a bench press and that. If I want to teach someone to wedge between the bar and bench to push away from them, dead press is the best variation for that. So, all these variations, like I said, they keep you from falling victim to the law of accommodation. They allow you to learn new movement at a fast rate of speed, but they help you overcome muscle groups that are even starting to shut down because there's too big of an imbalance. And they teach you how to move and what to feel. So there's a lot of payoff for all this variation that people don't really realize, and that's why we keep coming up with new variation. Like I said, if you have to introduce 15% or more new exercises a year for people to learn at the fastest rate possible, then I have to stay on my game and keep moving and keep coming up with new movements, because it can't just be a new movement that's not relevant. It has to be relevant. It has to be something that has direct transfer, because we're not looking just for a new movement. I also want to find a new movement that maybe hits an area that maybe we already hit really well, and I guarantee we do already hit really well. But if I can find something that works better or has a lower chance of injury or wear and tear on your body, that's what I'm really looking for. So I'm
Well,
constantly
and then the way that we
trying
can
to find
find
that.
those things too,
Mm-hmm.
just before I came in earlier, I was doing so I did max effort bench against it was a circa max, 1 rep bench against band
Mm-hmm.
25% band tension. Went straight into the accessories, and the one that you had programmed for today was nasty. So I did some board press, and then moved into the other piece. The other piece was 8 supinated chest supported rows,
Mm-hmm.
dumbbell, right into neutral grip, right into
Yeah.
elbows wide.
Yeah.
You're talking 8, 16, 24 reps. That's one set.
Yeah.
You're just cranking with heavy weight. And I was like, holy shit, this feels like cardio. I was breathing hard. I was smoked. Everything. I
Yeah.
could feel everything firing. And you could have got that from one of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you were changing the angle, because if you're doing it right, you do your
Mm-hmm.
eighth rep, you've already fatigued those
Mm-hmm.
muscles. Now you got to search for more tissue, so you change the grip,
Yeah.
and then you go to arguably one of the easier ones, pulling those elbows wide, or probably the harder at the end, elbows wide. That neutral grip's usually a little bit easier for me, at least,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're doing like you're saying, where you're driving through the pad. So
Yeah.
this way, like bench, we're pushing away, but it's chest supported, so I'm pulling myself through the pad like
Yeah.
that to really engage the muscles. But Yeah, you get through 8, you get through 16, no problem. You're on that last set of 8, and you're like, holy shit. Like, you're questioning life, you know?
Because it's like you're at the end of your limit the first 8, but since you change and access new tissue, and you can keep going again, and yet you're 8, you're at your limit again, and then you're at your limit again for the third grip. So it's like doing 3 sets in one, but then you're doing 4 sets of that. So it starts to add up.
It's a great way to get some volume in, you know. And it's I think it's really important, especially for people who are in the functional fitness space, or you know, we have climbers, we have fighters, we have a lot of different
Yep.
endurance-based sport athletes who are on this. Obviously, yes, it has a great carryover to maximal output for power lifters, but that time under tension, you know, if you're thinking about combat sports, you're thinking about climbers, whatever it is, you can't beat that. I really like at the end of that. I did 4 sets, 30 to 60-second rest in between, right back at it as heavy as I could go. And it literally felt, and the whole thing probably took like 2.5, 3 minutes. I felt like I had just got done with like a 15-minute fight.
Yeah.
I was smoked.
Yeah. And you know, the cool thing too is that you will feel exactly each grip change, where the new tissue and where it's hitting. And that's one of those things where it's like that variation allows to build that mind muscle connection of exactly where you're hitting and how it should feel. It really helps people start to put that together, you know, because a lot of, you know, yeah, someone like you've been lifting for a long time, it's easy for you to pick that up. But for someone who's new, you know, it's like we always said, like in training people, you give someone a back exercise and they're like, where do you feel it? Oh, my arms. You give them a chest exercise. Where do you feel it? Oh, my arms. You know, it's like they don't feel their chest, they don't feel their lats at first, you know, like everything's like arms or this or that, you know, and it's not where it should be, right? But they're going to feel it in the weakest link. So at first their arms have to come up to speed to be able to put it into their chest, to be able to put it into the back. But having the wide enough variety and having the correct things like that exercise helps them feel it sooner and easier. And the sooner you can get your athlete to feel that, the faster they can get that mind muscle connection, the faster you can get results out of them. They can take off. It's easier for them to maintain good positions, which means for me, I'm always looking at an athlete as how well do you move. That's how that's going to dictate how intense I train you, right?
Absolutely.
If you can move perfect and maintain perfect positions, oh, we're going. And some people are, you know, at first they'll start with me like, okay, well that was a really good workout, but like, because they know the reputation of the place, they kind of like, well, I expected it was going to be a little more intense. It's like once you move well enough. Like, I'm not that guy who's going to run you into the ground or push you really hard when you're in bad positions. There's people who will do that because, like, oh, they'll come back the next day, I got sore. Like, look, I'm going to tell you what a good workout is. I'm not going to try to trick you to make you think you had a good workout.
Yeah, you have to earn that soreness.
Yeah.
You have to earn that soreness with good mechanics, right? You've earned the volume. Now we can start pushing those things, the intensity, the load, the volume, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that gets lost on people too. Which is a really good segue into actually what I wanted to talk about, which is the box squat. It's easier when you have somebody in front of you. You're coaching a class, or you're doing some one-on-one training or small group type stuff. You got a crew and you're making sure that they're doing it. Some of the frustrations that I've been having with the box squat lately is I guess it really falls back on me, my inability to translate that to the masses when we have other gyms and other countries doing this program. How, you know, so I want to really break down the box squat today, but maybe you have, because you've taught seminars literally all over the world in every different language. You've interacted with tens of thousands of people at this point, teaching them the box squat, hoping that you can really break this thing down and make it to where people truly understand what we're trying to accomplish. Because what I'm seeing a lot of is just people squatting to a box. Nothing wrong with that. That's not what we're doing. That's not the purpose of what we're doing. If you need a target, a little comfort, something to squat to, that's great. It's a great modification for people who don't have range of motion. But this, you know, and you're going to get into all this too. This requires a greater deal of flexibility and range of motion if you're doing it correctly. So maybe start off with a little history of the box squat, and then just see where it goes from there.
So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to a box squat. It sounds funny, it's one movement, but it's like, man, there's a lot. So
in my opinion, I think it's way more technical than a regular back
It's
squat.
it's very technical to do it correct. People don't believe that until they are forced and taught to do it correctly, and they actually go through it and realize how hard and difficult it is. I literally set a 400-pound, a mid 400-pound squatter onto a box at parallel with an empty bar on his back, and he could not stand up from the position I wanted him in. Okay, so I had a guy. The guy came in. He won the Arnold in Olympic lifting in his weight class. Comes into my gym. He does 5 sets of 5 with 550 raw squat, right? So 5 sets of 5 by 5. And I said, hey, I know you never do this. I said, but I want you should try a box squat sometime. Well, he's like making fun of my powerlifters who are box squatting, right? And they're doing speed work. And I said, when they're done, just try a rep. He had 225 on the bar. I was like, we'll do less than half of what you were just doing. He sits on the bar, and he gets that deer in headlight look, and he looks at me. I'm like, harder than you thought, huh? You know, he just couldn't believe he couldn't do one rep at 225, but he did 5 by 5 with 550. You know, so
You're talking about, oh, you're in this wide stance and you're cheating. Like, I don't want to derail you too much, but
No,
that's the kind of shit that I hear is like,
yeah, we'll cover all this, okay? And for one thing, I mean, that's that comment anyway. It's like, you know how many people are weak laterally and weak in their hips? And let's talk about sports. What do you hear about sports all the time? Hips, hips, hips. You want to hit hard? Better have good hips. You want to be a good wrestler? Better have good hips. You know, like, I mean, football, like, you just name it. Like, hips are extremely important in sport, right? So, anyway, box squat was originally invented at the original Westside Barbell in Culver City, California. That was before the one that most people know of is the Westside Barbell from Louis Simmons in Columbus, Ohio. We named Westside Barbell in homage of the original Westside Barbell in Culver City, California. That's why it has the same name. It was to pay respects to the original Westside Barbell. The reason being is because there are two places that kind of invented the conjugate sequence system at the same time. One was the Russian Dynamo Club in Russia. The Olympic lifting team, they ended up developing the conjugate system. They studied it, tested it, and proved it. It was going on at the same time, done in a different manner, but it was the same thing out at the original Culver City, California. They had constant variation in what they did. They produced Olympic champions and world record holders, Olympic gold medalists in track and field, like shot put, events like that. They produced world champions, an Olympic medalist in Olympic lifting, and in powerlifting they developed world champions and world record holders in powerlifting. So, and these were, you know, raw powerlifters. They were raw, and obviously Olympic lifting's raw. And you're talking about shot put, obviously that's raw. So they were the ones who came up with the great amount of variation, but they developed the box squat. I feel like Louis perfected the box squat after that. From what I understand, and you know, maybe they were doing it at the original Culver City, and maybe there just wasn't enough information to know that this is how they were doing it. What we understood, and what I understood from the original Culver City, California, is that they sat on the box to break up the eccentric-concentric phase. So 90% of soft tissue injuries happen during the reversal phase of lift. So think of an Olympic-style squat, and if you ever seen somebody do a clean and they catch it in the bottom, they can't stand up, but they bounce a few times and they stand up, they didn't get stronger during those 2-3 bounces. They stored a greater amount of kinetic energy in their tendons to allow them to get past their sticking point to stand up. This is where often people in Olympic lifting think that they might overestimate their squat sometimes because they get this stretch reflex out of the bottom. But then when they come to a box squat and they can't use that stretch reflex, they can't use that stored kinetic energy, and they have to contract their muscle tissues, and we put them at parallel, which is right below where they would get an advantage in their squat. So their squat would get them slightly above parallel, and then their quads kick in. So I put them right at parallel, which they think is going to be a really high squat for them. They're going to squat twice as much weight. The problem is they've only trained one way to get stronger. There's two ways, or faster, sorry. There's two ways to get faster. Greater amounts of stored kinetic energy, and then you want to work on static overcome by dynamic. So static overcome by dynamic is a sprinter in the blocks, and their first initial takeoff, that's static overcome by dynamic. A dead press, it's static, and you'll press it up, overcome by dynamic. Box squat, you sit on the box, you pause, you break up the eccentric-concentric phase, you eliminate that 90% injury rate from that reversal speed, and you have to contract your muscle tissues to create speed. So the stretch reflex, the store kinetic energy, you're creating speed through your tendons. Think of like pulling a rubber band apart, letting it go, letting it snap back together. And then hopefully you get past your sticking point leverage-wise. That's not the way I train people, but that's the way most Olympic lifters train. Really what they need to do is put just as much effort into static overcome by dynamic, so their muscle tissue contracts as fast as possible, and work on stored kinetic energy, which is what they do, right? So that way, instead of hoping to get past your sticking point, you're still building speed with your muscle tissue, so you can create more speed and make sure you get past those sticking points. So you don't want to have sticking points. Kind of the whole point of that, right? They box squatted because they wanted to break up the eccentric concentric phase and work on static overcome by dynamic to build that kind of speed as well, that kind of acceleration. West Side Barbell, when it went to West Side, like I said, from what I understand, and I'll say maybe Culver City, California, maybe they were doing this already, maybe there just wasn't any information about it, so we knew, but Louis started having people take a wider stance in their box squat than their actual competition stance. Now realize our competition stance, any CrossFit or Olympic lifter would consider it a wide stance squat to begin with. We're even wider when we box squat. When we do competition, we pull our feet in a little bit and go a little narrower. Why do we do that? Louis had us do that to overload our hips, to get our hips stronger, okay? The stronger our hips are, the more we squatted, the more we deadlifted, all right? Now, we would pull our feet in when we went to a free weight squat, so if we didn't have a boxing training, or if we went to competition. Why? Our leverages were better in competition. We went to optimal leverage position. But even if we were training and we pulled the box out, we still pulled our feet to competition stance, and the reason why we do that is because that box breaks up the eccentric concentric phase. It helps save our hips. We wouldn't want to go that wide in a free squat without the box there because of the overload in the hips. It's just a little too much for most people's hips and can cause wear and tear on their hips over time. So that is where Louis brought in the wider stance than your competition stance for a squat.
So if I hear you correctly, not only do you need more to be able to recruit more muscles by doing a proper box squat, but also it sounds like you need more hip mobility as well to be able to perform a proper box squat. So I think the misconception is, these guys from West Side that you've seen doing box squats with tremendous weight for speed work, they didn't look like they were very mobile. They didn't look like yogis. We'll put it that way. It's 275-pound men with abs up to almost 400-pound guys with extremely mobile hips.
Yeah, very.
And extremely powerful hips too.
And when I talk about most narrow stance squatters do not have good hip mobility, sure, there are world-class Olympic caliber Olympic lifters that do, right? People who have really good coaches who listen to their coaches and take good care of themselves, sure. But we look at CrossFitters, right? And what I'll tell you, what I see with CrossFitters is the number one problem I see with CrossFitters on them physically is that their hips need to be stronger and they have horrible mobility in their hips in general. If you just talk if you look at a whole class on average, and it's not. Here's the thing. This is not me bashing CrossFit, right? Like, every sport evolves. Everybody learns what the weaknesses are. They make adjustments. They make changes. It's not knocking CrossFit. The problem is with CrossFit is there's so much to learn, and it is like go, 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 go once you get in. So if you're not someone who is at a gym who does wide stance stuff, who brings in a lot of variation and everything's narrow, think of what you do in CrossFit, Olympic lifting, narrow stance. Your regular squats, your air squats, pistols, your deadlifts are conventional, no sumo. What are you doing to build lateral strength? Right? If you're not doing anything wide stance, if you're not doing a lot of lateral movement, we're going forward and backward, we're going in with narrow stances. Now, that's not a problem. The problem is, it doesn't mean that CrossFit's bad. It just means that your gym needs to program some wide stance things frequently enough to have strong hips to not build mobility issues. Mobility issues show up because of a weakness. And if you're not doing wide stance things, working on your hips, they're going to be a weakness. Your quads, hamstrings will dominate, be able to use a lot of weight and go narrow, but the minute you're asked to go wide, it's an issue. Here's the thing. Sumo deadlift is not easier than conventional. Some people are leveraged better for one over the other. Okay? That is it. You should be no more than 25-pound difference between the two, otherwise you have a mobility issue or a glaring weakness in a muscle group that needs to be fixed. So this is a way that we can monitor that and know where that's at. So, we can say, oh, we don't believe in wide stance. I don't believe in sumo, which I don't know why that is, but, you say that. Okay, well, you show up to the CrossFit Games and now you have to load a big heavy stone. You're going to have to go, nobody's going to do it in narrow stance, have their shins against the stone and try to go over their quads to get to the stone. They're going to go in a wide stance, put it right between their legs, and they're going to lift from that position. So what happens when you...
Anything in life, a bag of dog food, your
handbag to pick and throw over your shoulder.
Right, like your friend goes down in combat. You're not going to stand with your feet under your hips and do a conventional deadlift.
No.
You're going to straddle their shoulders. You're going to get as wide as you can to get leverage to pick them up, and you're going to probably drag them back in a wide stance too.
Correct. So the thing is, we need constant variation. We need to be in as many positions as possible. Our athletes need to have mobile hips because half of them were sumo deadlifters, right? So the sumo deadlifters need mobility because if they don't, they start to cost themselves a massive amount of poundage on their maxes because they're not in an optimal position. All right? So, we want that. And if we have a glaring weakness, we build a mobility issue. We build a mobility issue with a glaring weakness, we get injured. And so we don't want to be injured. You look at Westside Barbell, they weren't a gym, and my gym wasn't a gym that you show up and break a world record with an athlete, or they break 1 or 2, 3 world records, and then that's it in their career. No, you could show up and break 20, 30, 40 world records with one athlete because we keep them healthy, we keep them safe, and we keep them in the sport long enough to keep adding to that total. That's why when you look at the numbers that guys from Westside have done, a lot of these world records take a very long time to beat because they push them up so high because they stayed in the sport long enough. Show me someone who's been breaking world records for 20 years. I'll show you someone who's going to show up to a competition extremely confident, comfortable, and know exactly what they need to do, and they don't get riled because they've been there, done that more times than anybody else. So that's what we want. I had the oldest female world record holder of all time at 48 years old, and Westside had the oldest male at the time at 47 years old, right? So you take athletes who are breaking world records in those age groups. If we can stay healthy, we can keep pushing numbers up for a long time, and I do believe that we can break world records into 50. If someone's trained perfectly from day one and been really intelligent with themselves, and they have the drive long enough that we can do that. And we've seen 48. Why is 50 not possible? We want to stay healthy.
Yeah, Donnie was damn near 50 when he did his 3,000-pound total. So.
Yeah, exactly. So he had the biggest total in the world, and he was in his 40s, and that was the first 3,000-pound total, right? He played football and it wasn't a bodybuilding and things like that. In football, you can't tell me his body didn't get beat up. He went into powerlifting after football, so that's not perfect either in a sense. I'm not saying he didn't learn anything from football. It wasn't athletic from that, and didn't learn how to compete mentally and stuff. I'm not saying that, but if you take him and all he did was powerlift his whole career, his body probably wouldn't have been as beat up either, and his longevity could have gave him a few more years maybe to push numbers up, right? So there's potential, right? But you have to train correctly, and ignoring anything wide stance is not training correctly. That is just having a glaring weakness for no reason. Understand, for most people that we're talking to, who are listening to this podcast, we're talking about CrossFit because we're programming for CrossFit. We program for powerlifters too, but we're talking about CrossFit programming here, is that constantly varied is a big part of CrossFit. So you're saying constantly varied, but not that? Oh, constantly varied in all the muscle groups but my hips. That's not the point. We don't do that. Nobody's doing that. People just don't realize. They go in the gym, they hit hard, they're working on gymnastics, they're getting better at that, they're getting better at Olympic lifting. They realize they have to learn how to pace on calorie machines. They're learning all this stuff that I feel like they just don't realize they're not training it until they're like, I have hip issues or mobility issues, and then they think, man, because I've been training so much and training so hard. Yes and no. Yeah, you're training really hard, so you're building some strengths, but you're also not training certain areas, so you're building glaring weaknesses, and those imbalances are what's causing the issue, right? So Box squat, wide stance sumo deadlifts, those things are massive helps for you. So for the box squat, since we're talking about that, that's why we want to go really wide. And we eventually want to go even wider than a wide stance squat in those to really work the hips, okay? So box squat was originally to break up the eccentric-concentric phase, lowering our injury rates 90%. Average person box squats 15% less. We want to be right at parallel to inch below, no more than that. Reason why? If you're at a parallel, we have to use our hamstrings to get off the box, and then it turns into our quads. But we want the hamstrings to start it because most people are posterior chain deficient, and their hamstrings are not strong enough, okay? So we want to use the hamstrings first. If we drop down deeper than that, it is going to go back into the quads, and the quads are going to initiate the movement. And that's why we don't go more than an inch below parallel, okay? In a box squat. Not talking about a free squat. Now, if I wanted to push my deadlift up, and I'll give you a reason why I would do this. I had a female lifter one time at a point that had broken many world record squat, in squat and bench in total. And if I realize I want to bring her bench up and her deadlift up, because that's going to bring the total up the most. If I push her squat, keep pushing that higher, it's going to make it hard. Her squat kept going up, but her bench stayed the same, her deadlift stayed the same. So instead of getting a 10, 15, say getting a 20-pound PR on deadlift or squat, if I get a 5-pound PR on squat, but I can get 10, 15 on the bench and another 10, 15 on the deadlift, my total goes up more than just getting 10 on the squat or 20 on the squat and nothing else on the bench and deadlift, because that squat was taken out of the bench and deadlift, right? So I decided, okay, I want to push the bench and push the deadlift up, and if I just hit a 5-pound, 10-pound PR in squat, which is already a world record, we push the world record up more, and that's going to give us a bigger total overall. So I would do a very low box squat because that raises the deadlift up substantially. Okay?
So I was just about to ask about that because recently we did a front squat to a 12-inch box.
Mm-hmm.
And and people were asking like, hey, why are we doing that? And it's like, okay, well, what is there's a couple things that's going on with the front squat. It's going to be more of a demand on the anterior side of things, right? Your posterior is still supporting the load, of course, but I think just like you talked about, right, there is a large demand on the quads for the front squats. As well as the hamstrings, obviously. But we do a significant amount of posterior chain work, probably more than any other program that's ever been put together. And so, yeah, every now and again, we are going to hit the front side a little bit harder and taking it a little bit deeper. And people are starting to notice those things, too, because people are like, well, last time I did a box squat, I didn't feel it as much in my quads. And I just had a girl today talking about, because we had another workout that had thrusters in it, and she's like, man, before I was like halfway into the thrusters, my quads were blowing up from those front squats on the box to that 12-inch box. And it's like, yeah, that was what we were trying to do. We were trying to hit some of that to provide balance as well. And this is just from my own personal experience, but I found that, we're a frontally fixated society, and we don't really need to hit the front side as hard as we do, the back side, the obliques, things like that. All the stability muscles, people have done a good job, pretty decent job hitting the front side. But most of the time when they come to us, it's their back side that's lagging. So 100%.
Well, it's like, factory workers work with their hands in front, people on computers, hands in front. We're always like in front or front loaded all the time. And, that is true. But also, when people work out and they're at a lower level and maybe they're training themselves, they really work the muscle groups they can see in a mirror, because they can tell if they're getting bigger or not. They're not as excited about the muscle groups they can't see. Like if they can't see their back while working out, they're not as excited about it. They might not put as much effort into it. They don't realize where their glutes or hamstrings are at. But they can look down and see their quads and see their abs and, chest and arms. So, it's just kind of funny. That's kind of how it goes. But, we do want to do that. But there's also a component to it. When you guys did that low box squat, right, people's numbers are way down over a regular front squat, like hard movement, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. They were like, man, I feel like I even go lower than this on my regular front squat, but my numbers were way down.
Yeah, because I'm breaking up the eccentric-concentric phase with that, and so now instead of
bounce out of it and use that,
they couldn't use the tendons. Exactly, they had to use their muscle to accelerate from that position.
And oddly enough, the study that came out years and years ago that talked about, and this was the big study, the
Mm-hmm.
catalyst to saying that squatting below parallel was bad for your knees.
Mm-hmm.
They were studying Olympic lifters.
Yeah.
Yes, they were squatting below parallel, but just like you were saying, they were using that stretch
Mm-hmm.
reflex. So they were bouncing out of the bottom. That's what was
Mm-hmm.
bad for your knees, not
Yeah.
squatting heavy.
Yeah, and really, even if they just simply did every other squat workout was to a low box, they would build two types of strengths. They would build just as much speed as they have and store kinetic energy, but they'd also build the muscle accelerating quicker, the static over combined dynamic. They would be even faster, move heavier loads, and lift more weight, and they would last longer because, like I said, 90% lower injury rate from that static over combined dynamic movement by breaking up the eccentric concentric phase. The other component too is that it keeps our nervous system in check, right? So a lot of times I like to put a really heavy squat deadlift variation where you can overload, and then the next time will be to like a low box like that, because now you're putting hundreds of pounds less weight on your back, and while it's a very hard physical movement for you to do, your nervous system isn't taxed that hard because you don't have that big of a load really on you. And that's extremely
So
important for longevity.
your box squat, if you're doing it correctly,
Mm-hmm.
because we're changing the muscle groups ideally that we're using because we're going wider, we're having a
Mm-hmm.
more vertical torso on a lot of these things. Um, Ideally, your box squat is probably going to be lighter than your competition squat if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So you
That's
shouldn't
15% usually.
about 15%. So
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't be adding 100 pounds or 50 pounds to your um, traditional back squat if you're doing a box squat. That would just mean you're squatting to a box.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a difference. And the way that I kind of like to tell people, I think Lou said this, is don't even call it a box squat if it confuses you. Call it a standing hamstring curl.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to sit down and you're going to hamstring curl yourself off the box and use your hips to
Mm-hmm.
snap it forward. I really like that. And then another one I stole from Donnie was, because he saw this a lot too, and I asked him same question. I was like, man, how do you get people to stop plopping to the box? And he said, well, one of some of that can be weakness, some of that can
Mm-hmm.
be a mobility issue, but some of it
Mm-hmm.
is they're anticipating the box. They're reaching
Yep.
for the box. He's like, you don't reach for the box, you continue to squat, and the box is a nice surprise that lets you know you hit depth, you pause, and then you explode.
Yep. No, and Donnie's 100% right about that. If someone has hip mobility issues, you'll see as they get close to the box, their knees start caving in, and then it causes them to plop on the box because with their femur pushes their hip too far back, and they just don't have the hamstrings to control it. So if I see the knees cave in and then they plop, I know it's a hip mobility issue. I can test
So
it,
what
but
do you,
but I
yeah, so
know.
what are you doing there when you see your athlete plop into the box, their knees are caving in, like you said? What's a good? Because we
So
still want them to squat.
if they come down, and let's say halfway down their knees cave in, and they plop on the box, then they come up halfway back up, their knees come back out to where I want them. I know it's a hip mobility issue. Okay. Now, like I said, when I was younger, I would test it, and maybe put them on a different exercise, or check their internal external rotation and something like that. Now I've just seen it enough. I know what it is. Let's say their knees are tracking perfectly all the way down, and they get 2-3 inches off the box, and they plop on the box. Now I know their hamstrings are weak. Okay, because their hamstring when they got out of their quads and their hamstrings were supposed to kick in, they just didn't have it. They weren't strong enough to maintain the position that they were maintaining with their quads. So then they'll plop on the box. If it is anticipation, it's a touch go. It's just a really quick, barely touch go, and sometimes the butt will kick out or these things might break down, but it's just a touch go. If they plop, it's you can clearly tell. It's like boom, their hamstrings weren't strong enough. Okay, so knees cave in before it plops, mobility issue. Knees stay perfect, it's a strength issue. So then what I do is we take like the horse stall mats, they're 3/4 of an inch, and I cut them into 2 foot by 2 foot squares. That's the size of my boxes. I just angle them on a corner. So I like to have the tip forward, not square. And then I use 3/4 inch mats. I have 1/2 inch mats too, but I get it dialed in perfectly. And then I'll measure, or you can measure it with with a ruler, or not ruler, but tape measure. So take a tape measure and measure it, and so you have your height. I will say this though: once in a while, revisit this. Have someone look at your height. The reason why I say this is actually something I made as a mistake as a coach when I was newer to this. Okay, so when I first opened my gym, I'd already, been going to West Side, and I was already learning from Lou before my gym opened up. So my gym opened up, and these guys, like, I got these guys in, their squats are going through the roof. We had male, female lifters, their numbers are going up real high. Plenty happy with the numbers. And one day I come in, and man, they're squatting a mile high on a box. And I'm just ticked because to me, it's all about holding the
Right.
standard, right? Like it's about holding standards. Like if one of my athletes breaks a world record, I want them to do it as well or better than the person who did it before them. Meaning, I don't want to have my athlete
Leaving it out.
squat higher and go, well, was that really?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want that, right? So standard is huge, right? So I'm ticked because like my gym has to hold a standard, my athletes have to hold a standard, I have to hold a standard, and so the last thing I want to do, and I just didn't imagine these guys being the type of guys who would willingly squat to a high box. So I'm going over there and I start getting on them. Like I am like, what are you doing? Take the box height down. This is ridiculous. Like I am mad. And they all looked at me and they're good guys and they were just like, this is the same box height we've been using the whole time. And I check and I'm looking. I'm like, no, there's no way. And I have them sit. And when I look from the side, I realized, whoa, their hamstrings and glutes got a lot bigger. So since their hamstrings and glutes got so much bigger, it was now a high box squat. We had to pull mats out to get them back down to parallel. So if you ever get to the point where you're box squatting and your numbers are going through the roof, and after a while of training this system, you're like, man, my squat's really slowing down. Take a look at from the side, see if you're actually at the same position that you used to be. It's a good chance your hamstrings or posterior chain came up, considering like Justin talks about how much volume we do for posterior chain, that you're no longer squatting at or barely below parallel. You're probably squatting above parallel. Now we're not hitting the hamstrings the way we want to hit them anymore.
So I guess for the box squat, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have a few different things going on here. It's not just set up a box and let people squat on it,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're using it one as a diagnostic tool as a coach. We need to make sure that they have the hip flexibility and the strength in those positions
Mm-hmm.
to be able to lift the greatest amount of load out of that because it translates into a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
But if the athlete doesn't have that, then we have to elevate that surface to a
Mm-hmm.
position that they can. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where it goes into observable, measurable, and repeatable. And just like Shane was talking about with the horse stall mats, I have them too. I redid my whole gym with rolled rubber flooring. I took out the stall mats, but I cut all the stall mats down, and I have 1/2 inch, and I have 3/4. And because we have all these great systems, Wadify, push press, sugar wad, beyond the whiteboard, whatever it is, every time we do this, I challenge the athletes, hey, measure your box height, write down, put in there what your box height was, how many mats you used,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll slowly, over time, start to work
Mm-hmm.
that down.
Yep.
It's really no different when you have an 80-year-old client coming in and learning how or relearning how to squat. You might start them off at a 26-inch box, and then the next time go down to 25 inches and
Mm-hmm.
24.
Yeah.
And you slowly over time, hopefully, got that individual squatting below parallel. And then it's a quality of life thing at that point. They're able
Mm-hmm.
to take care of themselves. They don't need somebody to get them on and off the toilet. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with the athlete. Like, yes, we understand that they're going to be squatting a little high because
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the ability to do it yet. I don't care if they came in. I was just talking to a guy yesterday. He has a decent squat. He's in the mid sixes, um, and I same scenario trying to get him on the box squat. He's like, "Well, I can squat all the way," and I'm like, "Yes, I know you can, but on this box you can't. You can't maintain
Mm-hmm.
the position, so we got to start you a little higher."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Well, I can squat this number," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's impressive for you and your friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's not impressive for me." And here's what I'm telling you: if you can't perform this correctly, imagine how much bigger your squat would be if you
Mm-hmm.
could perform this correctly. So like you're saying, you're using it as a diagnostic tool. We're fixing imbalances, we're fixing inefficiencies. But if you're doing it right,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make sure that you're doing it right, meaning you're at or slightly below parallel so that you can get the maximum contribution out of it. To Shane's point, and I've seen it even in my gym with CrossFitters where their glutes and their hamstrings start to grow. Depending on And some of that might even just be their ability to recruit those muscles to do the job where they weren't able to do it the first time they measured.
Mm-hmm.
And technically speaking, their box squat is fundamentally sound. It looks
Mm-hmm.
great, except now they're just a little high. And if you don't remeasure that, what ends up happening is the things that happen to me is, the athlete will come back to you later, man, I'm PRing everything, but my back squat isn't going up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, let's take a look at your box squat, because this conversation just got brought up the other day
Mm-hmm.
with a CrossFitter. Hey, we need to be doing more back squats, and I'm like, we actually do a lot of back squats.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing them in a manner that preserves the tissue and strengthens up the hips and all the other things that you have imbalances on. Um, and so they argued and they're like, well, my back squat's not going up, and I was like, let me see your box squat. Same scenario. The
Mm-hmm.
individual is squatting too high. So when they go to do their regular box squat and they move their feet in, they understand what depth is because they have thousands of reps at doing it in that
Mm-hmm.
narrow stance. They don't know what depth is here because now they've
Mm-hmm.
earned a new range of motion, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not expressing it. And
Yep.
the old saying is new range is weak range. You have to train it. And every time you get to earn a little bit more, you have to work just as hard as before.
Mm-hmm.
You should never be comfortable in the system.
Yep.
It's not fun.
So yeah, and there's a couple of simple things about this system. One, if your squat's not going up, something you're doing is wrong. You have to realize how many world records in squat have been broken over all the weight classes in powerlifting, using the system. How many pound for pound records? How many by formula records? Straight up the biggest squats ever done. This system is produced over and over and over again in every different way possible. So if your numbers aren't going up, you're making a mistake. So you have to look within inside the system of what you're doing, and that's like where we're talking about measuring the box height and rechecking. Maybe you do it like every quarter, every 4 months. Just check. It takes 5 seconds to check. Okay. But the nice thing is it's also measurable. Okay. So let's take for example like this. Let's say you're plopping because your hip mobility is not there. So if we check your internal external rotation, we might say, okay, I noticed for like and it could depend on person, but you might find for this individual, every 2 degrees more range of motion that I get out of them, I can lower the mat 3/4 of an inch. So then I just measure their external rotation. When I gain back 2 more degrees, I can drop a mat. 2 more degrees, drop a mat. Also, it can be one of those things. Now, let's say it's a strength issue, not a mobility issue. If it's a strength issue because your hamstrings aren't strong enough, okay, we can take and do, say, stiff leg deadlifts or dimmels or glute ham raises, whatever hamstring exercises. And you might find, okay, every time I add 3 reps to my glute ham raises, my max rep glute ham raises, I can drop one mat. Or every time I add 20 pounds to my stiff legs, I can drop one more mat. Everybody's different, but you yourself will find you can do a direct translator like that and find like, okay, this lift means this lift means this, and that's what we use. So we don't have to guess anything. I don't have to put you in a box before you're ready for it. I just have to stay with the protocol. I noticed like it took us a 20-pound jump into stiff legs for sets of 20 for us to drop one mat. Okay, next time he adds 20 more pounds, I can drop another mat. No guesswork. Everything's measurable, and we just have to understand what the fault is: mobility, strength, combination, or like a touch and go, like Donnie was talking, like the third thing Donnie was talking about. He talked about the other two as well. Is that we have to decipher what it is, and then we can make a correction to that. If your athlete touches and goes too quick, simple fix for that one. I tell them you're gonna go when I tell you to go. You sit in the box, stay tight. I'll tell you when to go. And then once you get used to doing that, they get used to it. They feel the difference. They feel the way it works. They'll do it on their own. It's not a problem.
And that initially was a part of the protocol
Mm.
for box squatting with Westside, if I'm not mistaken. Picking your feet up, bringing your feet back down. There was no
Mm.
benefit necessarily to picking your feet and
Mm.
putting them back down. It was making people do that hard
Mm.
pause or rocking back. Like the rocking back
Yeah.
isn't technically sound,
Mm.
It's not
Yeah.
something you want to do at the bottom of a squat rock back. You got,
Mhm.
1,000 pounds on your back. You obviously don't want to rock back in the middle
Yeah.
of a squat because you're probably not coming back up.
Yeah.
You probably aren't going to pick your feet up in the bottom
Mhm.
of a squat either. There was a purpose to those things. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
We'll
So,
wrap it up there.
well, and I'll touch on that, and then if you have just a few more minutes, we'll
Yeah,
finish
yeah, for
off the
sure.
box squat. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes as a coach, you come up with things to make someone do what you want them to do, so they get the actual feeling, they get the response out of it, and they get what we're supposed to get out of it. So picking the feet up, yes, that was a way to get someone to stay on the box. Their feet up or off the ground, you can't stand up, right? I mean, pretty simple, right? Pretty effective, pretty simple.
Right.
You don't have to do it. What I recommend people is don't rock back. That's something people did in the past. What a lot of people did in the rocking back was they made a mistake for you're supposed to relax and fire hips, relax and fire hips. And people would see that in our videos and think that was lean back. No, that's not lean back. That's relax and fire in the hips. Relax and fire in the hips is to create a dynamic state in the hips to get them to fire
So
really
that had to do with
fast.
squatting into the foam too, right?
And that can also be yeah, that too. So we don't want to lean back. The best one was taking the feet up off the ground if you're talking about a physical action to get you to do something. But the best way really is to tell athlete you're not coming up till I tell you to go up, and make it all different. Don't give them a set range. I don't care if they're sitting in the box for 5 seconds. It is what it is. They will learn, hey, it's much easier if you do a split second pause for me than if you make me do the pause with you. But they will get the feeling they're looking for, and that's really what we want. So let's just kind of talk about execution of the box squat so we make sure people are doing it correctly, okay? In a box squat, it puts your shin in a vertical to slightly laid back angle. This takes pressure off your knees. Not to say you shouldn't be able to go knee over toe. You should fully be able to go knee over toe. You should have the full ankle mobility and things like that, but this is for a different purpose. So I'm not saying that you can't do those types of squats. I'm just saying that this helps keep wear and tear off of you and puts you in a different position. If we have vertical shin angle to slightly laid back shin angle, we are going to have to hamstring curl, leg curl, like pull our heel towards our butt, but our foot's not going to move on the ground to initiate the movement. So that's where Lou was talking about it's like a standing leg curl, okay? So for most people, some people can put their toes straight ahead and have mobility in their hips. 99% of people do not have that. Most people have to do a 45-degree angle or out farther with their foot because you want the knees tracking over toes, okay? The movement mistake that most people make is they usually hinge at the hip and push their butt back before they start pushing their knees out. Then they stay bent over and they're bent over on the box. I want your chest as high as possible in the box. So I push my knees out and sit back at the exact same time. If I'm too far bent over, I know that the knees weren't pushed out soon enough and hard enough. So if they're pushed out at the right time, you should be almost straight up and down on that box when you're touching the box, okay? So initiate hips back and knees out at the same time. If you're in a good position, your shins will be straight up to slightly laid back. If you started to come straight down and you didn't sit back far enough, your knees and your shin angle is going to go forward. Okay, so for a coach, that's the nice thing about a box squat is, in CrossFit gyms, it's hard to keep coaches in. People move on to different things or move or whatever. Is to keep a high level CrossFit coach. Teaching a box squat is so much easier for the new coach because it slows the movement down, and it's easy for us to say, knees forward, they didn't sit back hard enough. Bent over, they didn't push their knees out hard enough. Shins straight up and down and slightly laid back, their hips are far enough back, or the chest is straight up and down, we're good. Knees come in, mobility issue. Plop on the box, knees come in while plopping on the box, mobility issue, raise the box. Knees stay out, plop on the box, hamstring issue. We use our accessory movements to fix that problem. As our accessories go up, the box height drops.
I hope everybody listening to this presses pause, rewind, and writes that down. Shane just gave you a beautiful checklist as a coach when you're going through to look at any kind of deficiency. So if you write that down, you study it, and you understand it, you can make meaningful change with your athlete squatting to a box instead of squatting on a box.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. It's a very simple way, and you can start learning how to do those things for a regular squat and other lifts. take that same protocol and start to learn all lifts and break them down, and you'll break them down into different ways of what's mobility, strength, and then we're not giving you accessory movements just to get stronger, just to optimize leverage. We're also giving you all these accessory movements to learn how to feel new muscle groups that haven't been firing well and used at the level they should be often. We're giving these to identify glaring weaknesses. We're using these so that you can do other movements properly. Like if your hamstrings aren't strong enough, well, we have the accessory work to do that. We're giving these accessory movements to do all of these things. And you can create what they call a whip. In sports, you have a whip, meaning that I don't have to have a 100-meter sprinter run 100 meters to know how if they're going to run a faster 100 meters. I might find that if they box jump higher, their first 20 meters are faster, they jump higher, they deadlift more, things like that, and I can have a whip, which means I add all these things together and I know exactly what the athlete's capable of. You should have a kind of this whip for every movement that your athlete does. You know, this is a breakdown in mobility. This is a breakdown in strength. This is a, this is what muscle group is weak. Well, if they move this way, this muscle group is weak. If they move that way, this muscle group is weak. You should build that for every movement that you have an athlete in the gym, every compound movement. And then our accessories, that is really what we put accessories towards, is to fix those issues. And the box squat is the easiest one to teach people that thought process as a coach. And your athletes themselves need to learn as well, because we create learning facilities. We don't just tell someone what to do. We want them to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. We want to buy in.
Hell yeah, that's a good
Cool.
close right there.
Cool.
Unless you got anything else to add.
We're good, man.
Awesome,
So,
brother. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy dude. We'll do it again next week.
all right, man. Have a good weekend.
Otherwise,
Bye.
try not to get wrecked by that snowstorm coming in.
All right.